Hey, Wendy?
And just a second. And then here. Record that. And make sure the numbers are moving. Okay. Then afterwards, you gotta remember to stop it. Okay. And hit complete. Stop complete. Yeah, okay. And can you tell Bob I'll get with him in a minute. I gotta call him.
Did you hear that?
No?
Wendy will be with you in a minute unless it's something I can answer.
Well, since you put out the agenda, why are we allowing comments from the public on items not appearing on the agenda at a special meeting? That wasn't supposed to be the case.
I can't answer that.
Well, why don't you ask Wendy then?
He's on the phone, which I can anyway. Aren't we legally required to?
No, not at a special meeting.
Oh.
And I only bring it up because we have a comment for somebody wants to share for item not appearing on the agenda.
Oh.
There's no public comment on a special meeting.
And I want to give.
Oh, and did I leave that on the agenda? You know why? Probably because I did the agenda for the first time.
Well, I just want to get the chair in trouble for that. That's all.
Fine, thank you.
You're just going to get me in trouble.
No, what's going to happen is that gives me more time to make comments on my own instead of the public, so you'll be suffering for a blabbering chair.
Yeah, going back to me saying that I'm embracing all things City of Sonoma, I did my first agenda. I did my first agenda packet. I am a horrible printer, I will say for the record. I think I wasted a whole ream of paper.
Are we having true confessions here or what?
Apparently.
Watch it, the boss is on.
Uh-oh.
And now we have legal counsel as well.
So KCOI isn't here.
Okay.
So we're probably going to have to send them the YouTube link.
Okay,
and
afterwards.
They'll have to upload it at a later date.
All right.
Good evening. I don't know why I had trouble joining. It wasn't giving me my audio and video things. I had to open the meeting 3 times.
That wasn't a subtle hint or anything, Larry.
I'll be good. I'll be good. I promise I'll be good.
Yeah, Christina keeps telling me she's figured out a way to mute me when I need to be muted.
Well, I had my second vaccine today, and I'm still standing.
Good for you.
Which one did you have, Sheila?
Pfizer?
My wife had the Moderna and she was out for 4 days.
Wow.
What'd you have, David?
I had the Pfizer too. Did great. I just got hungry on the after the second one.
Oh my
But
You had
goodness.
Moderna and had no problem.
Eating more than usual today.
Napa is looking for people to get vaccinated. They haven't got enough people showing up.
Really?
Yeah.
So what do they do? They have to recycle those things then, or
Well, I don't think they've taken them out of the deep freeze yet, but
do they have a pretty good shelf life, I take it?
well, if it's in the deep freeze, it does.
Well, they ought to start opening it up to kids 13 and older, 12 and older. My granddaughter would love to get vaccinated.
Yeah, I've got a granddaughter that's 15 that would love to get vaccinated too.
Yeah. Yeah, my granddaughter's got babysitting jobs lined up, but they want her vaccinated. So.
Are we going to have Commissioner Barbos here tonight?
No, I think he's still out of town.
Okay, and I hadn't heard from Commissioner Bob, so I don't know if he's going to join us. I'm assuming he is if he hasn't told us ahead of time. And normally Bob's really good at that. but we do have a quorum, and it is the 6 o'clock hour, I guess.
Somebody want to reach out to Bob McDonald? I don't have his number, but
I'll do it. If you'll, I'll just put on mute.
why are you wearing a mask tonight, Christina? Can't hear you.
You're muted.
I'm in the real council chambers with Wendy.
Ah,
And we're going to join you soon.
It
Maybe.
may-
Hey, if we're all vaccinated, it's time.
I agree. And let's bring cake.
Man,
Well, we'll wait until David gets off the phone with Bob, successful or not.
I walked off with my granddaughter, took a walk and looked at the Boys Boulevard Bridge today. It's coming along.
Why does it take 2 years to build a small bridge?
I can't, I don't know enough to tell you, but I'm assuming that that there were good reasons.
Why would you do that?
Did you walk all the way over there, Larry?
No, my granddaughter lives and my daughter live in a house in the Springs, so it's walking distance to there. But I did my 5.9 miles today, so I'm sticking with it. I'm on the program. How about you, David Storr? Did you do your 5.9 miles today?
You beat me by 5.9 today. My, as I said, my wife is, she's my inspiration, and we weren't able to go today. Tomorrow,
All right.
promise. We bought some new hokas, shoes or whatever with the super thick soles. They're great. Hoka.
are they like platform shoes
They remind me of the 70s. I'll tell you, Sheila.
in a disco?
But they're all foam. They're all foam, right?
Yeah, they do really good on the arch support. So,
Yeah. I've got something comparable to that, but
Yeah.
I bought mine at Araldi's, which I try to support.
One day I'll have Christina tell you about my Aroldi story. After I've left your employment.
Okay. Well, so Bob McDonald's not going to be here, so we might as well start there, Ron.
Okay, so yes, indeed. I have my gavel. It's a nice piece of solid square stock. I'd like to call to order the meeting of April 22nd, special meeting. And at this point, I'd like to ask for roll call, please.
That's me. Sorry.
You,
I'm sorry, in trouble. This is my first meeting. Vice Chair Barnett,
Here.
Commissioner Bohar,
Here.
Commissioner Felder,
Here?
Commissioner O'Neill.
Here.
And do I call the people who aren't here?
No.
Chair Wellender.
here.
Yay!
We
So
have
now we will sit patiently. We would like now to do the pledge, so we will need the flag, Ms.
Check this.
Goody.
It's right behind her. Yeah, we're okay.
Good enough.
Okay. Together?
Yep.
I pledge allegiance to
Allegiance
to the flag of
flag
the
United.
United States of America and to the republic
Republic
for which it stands,
One nation,
one nation, under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty.
liberty
and
and
justice
justice
for all.
for all. Okay, this is a little sidebar. I'd like to suggest that while we continue to be virtual, possibly next time, I would like to graciously ask someone to verbalize the pledge and we can all lip sync because of the rather weird reverberation and delay and whatever. But having said that, now Mr. Storr, I need clarity. It was suggested that because this is a special meeting that we do not have to open it up to the public for comment on things not appearing. Is that correct?
I believe so. We can defer to council because Dave 5 is here tonight.
Mr. Dave 5, your thoughts?
Good evening. It is true that it's not a legal requirement to provide public comment on items not on the agenda for a special meeting. However, this was noticed. The agenda does include that provision, and therefore I think it's appropriate to allow for comment on items not on the agenda, according to the time limits that that the chair has determined.
Okay, very good then. But prior to that, I just want to have a few pre-comments, and that is we have just 2 items this evening. And the first item, I believe you all are aware of, the 8.1, the Haven, will be continued. And so when we get to that point, we will be seeking a motion to continue it to some undetermined date. And then the main item, 8.2 this evening, is that it is our goal to have a thoughtful review and discourse of the draft ordinance amending the City of Sonoma's Municipal Code, Chapter 1944, Affordable Housing and Density Bonus. We're going to be hopefully getting some good input from the public. We're going to give further direction to the staff, but hopefully by the end of this meeting, we will be directing staff to prepare the final copy and be forwarding on to the City Council for their first reading. So that's the goal. And then this is for both commissioners and for anyone that is listening this evening, which I forgot to talk about, and I'll come back to that. There was frustration expressed by some about the limited time allowed for comment. And I have given this due consideration, and I will be this evening allowing a little bit of an increase in time. And this increase is specific for this meeting or meetings similar that are not specific projects. And so this evening I'll be allowing the public to speak from 3 to 4 minutes. And everyone will be heard that wishes to speak. And there may also then be a second round where individuals may want to continue and speak a second time. I am not casting judgment on any of my fellow commissioners, but your chair, after 3 or 4 minutes of listening, sometimes gets lost. So part of the goal is with the intent of listening thoughtfully to the public's comment. It has been my experience when they go on too long, I sometimes lose track. So that's part of the reasoning behind giving the public a second opportunity to speak should they wish to. Now, trailing back up to the public, we, as know, welcome the community's input, even in this strange COVID time. And hopefully people realize that they can be viewing our meetings online. They can be submitting comments via email, and also, of course, participating virtually via Zoom. So we hopefully will have some participation this evening. At this point, then I would like to open up to the public for any items that are not appearing on the agenda. And so, Ms. Tierney, is there anyone waiting in the wings?
Unmute.
Terry Shore has her hand up.
Okay.
All right, Terry, you're on.
Hello, good evening, Chair Wellender, commissioners, staff, and members of the public. My name is Terry Shore. I am the Advocacy Director for Greenbelt Alliance. Thank you so much for the opportunity to provide some public comment on an item that is not on the agenda this evening, but it is related and it is an issue of importance to the city of Sonoma. I did provide written comments about the fact that the County of Sonoma has released its draft environmental impact report on its proposed scattered housing rezone across the County of Sonoma. And you did review the earlier proposal before the EIR went out, if I recall correctly. And it proposes parcels that are currently not zoned for housing to be zoned for by right medium density housing. And that involves a number of communities and parcels, including the city of Sonoma and Sonoma Valley. We are urging the Planning Commission and the staff and also the City Council to review the draft EIR and make comments. There are a couple of highlights that I would like to share. We're only beginning to review it. It is large, as most EIRs are. Number one, the preferred alternative at this time recommends that the parcels inside the city of Sonoma's urban growth boundary around Broadway not be included in the county's rezone because they would trigger greater environmental impacts and would be more costly to develop. I hope that the city will support that position because it removes a conflict with the city's UGB general plan and sphere of influence. So in a way, from our perspective, that's good news for the city of Sonoma. However, there are other parcels in Agua Caliente, Glen Ellen, and other parts of Sonoma Valley that the community should learn about. And we have requested that the county hold some additional public meetings, perhaps at the SVCAC, the Springs MAC, or the North Valley MAC. And Supervisor Gorin seems open to the idea. So I hope that you will join us in requesting additional outreach beyond the one public hearing plan for May 20th at 1 in Santa Rosa. The last point I would like to make is that we are very concerned that the DEIR finds significant and unavoidable impacts that cannot be mitigated in two critical areas: wildfire risk and vehicle miles traveled. So that means if this goes forward as proposed, the county would have to adopt a statement of overriding considerations. And it means that more people will be exposed to wildfire risk, and there will be more people driving and generating associated tailpipe emissions. We believe that is inconsistent with city and county policies to reduce climate change emissions and to increase, not decrease, wildfire risk. So I hope you will take that into account and perhaps include that in your comments to the county. So thank you so much for your time. I know you have a very important agenda this evening, and I hope to stay and listen in on the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. Anyone else?
Nope,
Mr. Chair-
I don't see anyone else.
Okay,
Mr.
with
Chair-
that,
Mr.
yes.
Chair, if I can, just so for Terry's benefit, pretty much, I'll be talking about the county rezones notice of availability in my comments later on in the meeting.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, with no one stepping up, I did see something flash regarding Fred Auerbach. Is he wanting to speak? Christina, do you know?
I don't see any hands.
He's just
Okay.
chatting.
Okay. Very good then. I'll go ahead and we'll continue on now and close public comments on items not appearing on the agenda. Now, do I have any comments from my fellow commissioners regarding the current agenda, wishing to accept or propose any changes? Seeing none, we will accept the agenda as written. Christina, do we have any late correspondence?
We do have late correspondence. We had a letter from Fred Allebach.
Okay.
And do you want me to read this, or I'm not sure what our process is actually?
Well, these are the same letters that were posted on the city website, correct?
I am not sure if this one was posted or not. It came in at 3:24 today.
I did receive it in my personal email and I've read it.
And I have it here
Me
myself.
too.
I got it also.
I got it also.
Okay, next one.
I believe that's it.
Okay. I saw that there was a letter by Dave Ransom that was also in the city website, or what Wendy had sent out, and also a letter by Dennis Aftergut. So those are the three that I have in my possession. Okay. I believe we have nothing posted on the consent calendar. And so let us segue right into the first agenda item, and that is the item regarding the Haven. And we know that this is to be continued. Does anyone have any questions regarding this?
Do we have a date that it will be continued to?
We don't know yet.
Okay,
That'll be off, if you'll continue it off calendar.
okay.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. So if I see no other comments, would someone like to make a motion for its continuance?
And move that we continue this item to a date uncertain, off calendar.
Well, how you doing?
Is there a second?
Second,
Further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Bohar,
Aye.
Commissioner Felder,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Neill,
yes?
Vice Chair Barnett, Chair Wellender.
Yes.
Unanimous motion passes.
Okay,
We lost our planning director.
that's not good. Okay, we will be patient until our planning director returns, which will hopefully be soon. But we can anticipate that we'll be going right into agenda item 8.2, from which we will attentively listen to a staff report as soon as David comes back. Or, no. Christina, will both you and David be speaking to this?
Yeah, correct.
In the meantime, we can critique his decor.
Gonna say you all can critique my ability to run a meeting for me.
No, you got to run a few before we do that to you.
At least I didn't lock myself out of the meeting room.
So,
I did that. I did that my first one. David can attest to that.
Yes, what?
That I locked myself out of the meeting room. My first one.
Well, that's not as good as my Aroldi story.
you can say that.
Good, though.
So
I don't
now
mind.
now with Mr. Storer back, we're going to jump into 8.2, which has to do with our inclusionary housing ordinance. So at this point, I would like staff to share their thoughts, please.
Mr. Chair, if I can, just while Christina's doing the transition there, that was Bob on the phone. He has limited access and apologizes. I'll call him tomorrow and bring him up to speed.
Thank you.
All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
All right, now I'm going to attempt to do the slideshow, so bear with me. Can you see my slideshow, or can you just see the my PowerPoint window?
We're good.
All right. Well, thank you all for continuing this journey down zoning code land. Uh-oh. There we go. We're here tonight to continue our discussion from April 8th and are hoping to focus tonight on the request from the Planning Commission for additional data, which was sent previously to the Planning Commission in the form of an ABAG report, and as well as some information from the city of Healdsburg. And David will lead the discussion with that and conversations about the missing middle. We'll go over some our affordable housing inventory and present some data on the breakdown of our existing RENA numbers and how that compares to our existing inventory and what we're expecting for this next RENA cycle. And again, as Chair Wellender mentioned, our goal is to have recommendations to forward to City Council so we can move this through the process. So just as a starting point, our affordable housing is largely outlined to meet our RENA numbers. Our numbers for this RENA cycle, which is going to close in 2023, was a total of 137 units, 63 of those being above moderate, 27 being moderate deed restricted units, 23 being low income units, and 24 being those affordable to very low income households. Our current prognosis is we're doing extremely well at meeting those goals. We've currently provided 170 units of housing over this cycle, with 76 of those being above moderate, 35 being moderate, 35 low, and 24 being very low. This is I'm not sure how well this spreadsheet is coming up, but this is our inventory of affordable housing units in the city of Sonoma. We have what year they were built, how many units are affordable, what income categories, if they are ownership or rental, as well as when the contract will expire. I believe Commissioner Barnett brought up that some of these units that were put in 30 years ago are getting pretty close, and he's correct. The Bainbridge expires in 2022. We have several in 2025, 2030. So some of these dates are indeed coming up quickly. We also have some of the terms of the affordable housing contract, which over time have gotten a little bit longer, but we have some from 33 years, 45 years, and 55 years. And one of the recommendations and discussion points tonight is to amend that 55 years to being in perpetuity.
So it looks like there's about 45 that will expire by 2025. 45 units.
That sounds like it's in the right ballpark.
Yeah, and
Can you please send this out to the commission after we're done here?
Absolutely.
thank you for this. I really appreciate it.
You could probably send the whole PowerPoint, right, Christina?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm feeling very old all of a sudden.
And 20 years just went right by.
All right. So in order to dig into the data a little bit, I am presenting some numbers from our 2018 annual progress report, as well as our 2020 annual progress report. And the intention between presenting these two numbers is that our picture of what is being provided through our inclusionary housing ordinance gets a little bit muddy when we wrap the data from the Alta Madrona project. That was a subsidized redevelopment project that is all affordable and wasn't associated with our inclusionary housing program. So the way our annual progress reports work is the units get counted the year that the building permit was pulled. So in 2018, the Alta Madrona had not had those building permits pulled. So as of that year, we had 0 very low income units, 67 low income units, and 71 moderate units. So that really represents what our inclusionary housing ordinance requires, which is about 50-50, and no very low income units because none of those are required by our ordinance. Fast forward to 2020, and that's where the units for Alta Madrona pop on. That's those 24 very low income units. And then we have 95 units of low income housing. There's another 26 from Alta Madrona, or 24, 25 that are part of that change that data a little bit. And then we have 73 moderate income units. So we go from, in 2018, 0% very low to approximately 50-50 low and moderate. When we get to 2020, we have 12% very low, 48% low income, and 37 moderate income units. And then if we look at the percentages that our RENA number is shooting for, so out of our total of 137 units, our allocation is 24 for very low, 23 low, 27 moderate, and then 63 market rate. And that breaks down to 44% very low income, 52% low income, and 4% moderate.
And this is a combination of all affordable housing units, both inclusionary and non-inclusionary, that have been produced. Am I right?
So the RENA numbers are just what what ABAG has assigned to the city of Sonoma. Right. The 2018 and 2020 numbers include density bonus units, which is where the how the Alta Madrona units came about, as well as some other redevelopment projects such as the Sonoma Commons, and then the inclusionary units mixed in.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
So I broke this down a little bit differently in a table format so you can compare a little bit better, but you can see that through our the implementation of just our inclusionary ordinance, we are really getting a flip-flop skewed provision of affordable housing compared to what our RENA goals are. So the middle 2020, we're in better shape, but I don't think we have a ton of those big projects on the horizon with redevelopment going away and just the way things are structured. The city of Sonoma doesn't have any large vacant chunks of land that can develop huge quantities of affordable units.
How come the first two rows don't add up for the total?
Because I'm really bad at math. Okay. It was done in Excel. You mean the 2018? That not 1.5?
Neither one of them add up to the total.
Because I found an error in the PowerPoint, in the Excel sheet, and I didn't correct it all the way, probably. The 145 and 199 are the correct numbers.
And what's APR stand for?
The annual progress report. That is the annual report that we submit to Housing and Community Development every year to demonstrate progress on our housing element.
Okay.
All right. So I also wanted to dig in a little bit and give some information about AB 1505. And this is getting down to why some of our recommendations are the way that they are. In a nutshell, this assembly bill puts some onus on the city to document reasoning and economic feasibility for any ordinance that has more than 15% of low-income housing. So when it was passed, it allowed the city to adopt inclusionary housing ordinances to require a certain percentage of affordable housing as a condition of approval for rental units. So this is where the differentiation between rental and ownership, part of it was coming from. So it does specify moderate, lower, very low, or extremely low income. HCD is intended through this bill to review the ordinance within 10 years of adoption. And it requires that the city complete an economic feasibility study for ordinances that exceed 15% of the total number of units that are rented at the very low level or less. And the economic feasibility study must demonstrate that the ordinance does not unduly constrain the production of housing. And if HCD finds that the feasibility study doesn't meet the standards, then or fails to submit the study within 180 days, we have to limit the requirements to provide rental units to in a development affordable to houses of 80% or less to no more than 15%. So we're using that this as a benchmark of not wanting to go over 15% for the low-income units.
Now, do we have, given that we're requiring 20%, but it's included moderate, is that what we've been relying upon to not go over the 15% low income?
Right.
Figure?
This is why we don't want to go over 15% low income. It doesn't have anything to do with our 20% or our moderate.
But I think what Larry was saying is, yes, we were in that safe harbor, Larry, of not going over 15% in either one of those two categories.
Right, and have other cities undertaken these economic feasibility studies to go higher?
We haven't dug that deep, Larry, to be honest with you. It's typically when you get to 15 or 20, when you get north of 20%, even up to 30%, that's when those studies generally come into play.
Are we aware of any that have been done? I mean, I'd love to see what the nature of an economic feasibility study is and what it is you have to do. And I mean, it's an interesting idea, but I'd love to see how complex it is.
I can see what I can find for you. Yeah, as you know, as we've discussed before, this is really a phased approach for updating our zoning code. This is our first pass through. And so we're looking at any of the barriers to having some meaningful changes made now. And this economic feasibility study is definitely a barrier. It's going to cost time and money to implement if we do want to go that way. So just really this to help frame what our parameters were.
Yeah, as we get into the housing element, it might be interesting to consider what these economic feasibility studies actually look like and whether they can be part of a component to go to even higher levels of affordability.
Yep, great point.
Just to wrap up on that too, the housing consultant that we select, I know for sure the two that we've been talking to, they have actually presented elements to HCD for the Sacramento region. And I've actually got a couple of hard copies here of jurisdictions here to look at. I'll look through those to see if we can provide anything in there about the studies, Commissioner Barnett, and then Christina can also contact HCD and see if there's some other copies out there we can send out.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'm going to kick it over to Director Storer to go over the information that was sent out earlier from the City of Healdsburg.
Yeah, so I had a chance to speak, before I get into this, I did speak with some affordable housing builders, and in general, there's support for adding a component for very low income housing. A lot of ordinances are like ours that do not address or assign a percentage to VLI. I remember back in my earlier days in the career that everybody was going at 5% VLI, 10% LI, and then if you were lucky, you'd get something in the mod, regardless of above mod, discounting that altogether. And we in Sonoma, as we've said just previously, we have 10% LI and 10% mod, and we know that people have always built, for the most part, the moderate, whether it's for sale or for rental. In talking with the City of Healdsburg, and as you can see in those materials, I'll just do a thumbnail sketch. I thought it was interesting that their housing action plan, which dovetailed with their housing element, recommended a 30% inclusionary. And if you were to take a look on the second bullet here, that was done by Walter Keyser of EPS, a very respected economist, he said that 30% is doable. I've seen them earlier in my career at 30%, 25 to 30. The point being is, in the Keyser report, the EPS report, he talks about 6 policy levers, and we've kind of packaged those in our packet. I provided them to you here. One is project size, Second one is amount and distribution of the requirements. That is what percentage go to inclusionary and how they're composed in those particular 4 categories. And again, remember those 4 categories. I can tell you about 2 more. Let me just do that without trying to confuse you and confuse myself at the same time. So you have very low income, and a subset of that is extremely low income. Extremely low income is 0 to 30%. VLI is 30 to 50%. Then you have low income, which is 50 to 80. Then you have the mod, which is 80 to 120. And then you have the middle income that we'll get to later. That goes up to 160%. And then above moderate is 120% or north. So I kind of mix those last 2 up, but you'll get that point hopefully by the time we're done with our presentation. Then you can see that the 3rd bullet or lever is the primary mechanism and when in lieu fees may be applicable. 4th is the type of the housing unit, given the projects, given for the projects, what they look like, talk like, walk like, and smell like. Whether it's the timing of the development, whether it's the location of the development, and the design components of it. Then we also have the 5th lever, which is alternative compliance mechanisms. We talked about that at the prior meeting, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. And then also incentives, and Christina has not really made any changes to our ordinance with respect to that. We've just said that we will stay compliant with state density bonus law. And I will talk about density bonuses when I talk about the rezonings that are going on throughout Sonoma County. Getting back to an overall comment about Healdsburg, their ordinance, prior to them amending it to add the missing middle, at that time was for projects of 7 or more units originally, and then they went to 6, and then they're back down to 5 now, as we see today. Their 15% was for 10% very low income and low income. So you could say 5 and 5 or 8 and 2 or whatever you want to do. And then they had 5% mod. So 10% VLI and LI, and then 5% mod. The interesting thing is, as far as the timing, their staff report says that inclusionary units provided must be constructed concurrently with other project units. And while they may be smaller with fewer amenities, they must have a similar exterior appearance to the other projects units. Inclusionary units are to be distributed throughout a project as much as possible. And I know your commission had some thoughts about the size of the units and their distribution and location. One thing that I thought was interesting that Healdsburg does, and I've had discussions early at my arrival to Sonoma with these folks, and that is with respect to for sale projects, they actually have the land deeded from the developer to the city, and then they deed over to the Sonoma Land Trust, and they hold those lands in trust as a community benefit, and they lease the land to buyers and help them purchase homes. The alternatives that they have in their code, they do other than on-site construction, and I'm a fan of on-site construction, and I'll explain that in a bit. They do allow for land dedication and off-site building of inventory, and they also allow for the purchase of existing units and having them rehabbed, anything to do with long-term affordability. Their planning commission, as yours, has had questions about small projects. What happens when you get a project of 5 or fewer units, because their land supply, like Sonoma, is limited. They have concerns about alternatives, and do you really want to have a bird in the hand versus one in the bush? And I don't recall them talking about having a housing land trust, but I'm sure they have a mechanism in which to collect their in lieu fees, because they do have and have had an in lieu fee program long before we have. We actually don't have one yet. And there was general support by their planning commission about defining moderate and middle income affordability, which we'll address a little bit later. And we've provided the percentages later on in the PowerPoint. The basic components of the changes, you'll see that on page 4 of the staff report, and I won't go through all 11 of them. I've touched on them. The important thing, I think, or the main distinction is adding a definition. You can go to the next slide, I think, Christina. I think is adding a definition for middle income, which I think is that category of 121% to 160%.
Are we calling that missing middle or middle income? Because middle income.
One or the other. Yeah, they're synonymous with one another. So here you can see the things that I've just spoken about. The next slide. Oh, the last point on this slide, you'll see that prior to their adoption of the revised number, because they went from 15% to 20%, their production was 3 very low incomes, 14 low, and 18 moderate. You see an emphasis on the low to moderate within those income bands. Next, Christina, please. Yeah, I talked about the Sonoma Land Trust. Their ordinance now applies to 5 units or more, so they saw the Sonoma light. Just kidding. And then anything less than 5, they do pay an in lieu fee. Again, missing middle, moderate, whatever you want to call it. They also talked about incentives for multifamily housing, and that comes through the percentage, again, which we'll talk about in a minute. Next slide. So you can see what they did is they created this middle income, but they did not create it for the rental side. They did it for the for sale side. So you can see here that the moderate percentage stayed the same, but they basically switched out the low for the rent and the middle for the for sale. Basically what this does is supports the notion that people with very low income have a much harder time affording a home to purchase. And so they were keeping these bands in place here to allow for renters in the low income category. One could argue that they could do 2.5% VLI, 2.5% low, or even change the mod to 10% and then switch that out to 10% for the low. It's really a matter of policy, and that's what you'll be recommending to the city council. Here's the definition in red that they added to the municipal code. Next. Back to you, Christina.
All right.
Bye.
So where we are in the process now, after having our hearing on April 8th and listening to all the public comment, the commissioners' concerns and comments, we have several topics that we want to discuss tonight. And goals for our ordinance moving forward. The first is to really formalize and clarify what the affordability requirements are. The density bonus section is an important part. There are no recommended changes for that. I'm going to touch on increasing the term of affordability and the standards for different standards for rental versus ownership. Having a new or improved section on development standards, and implementing our in lieu fee for fractional units and for developments less than 4, which currently we don't collect any. There's no obligation for affordable housing for less. Oops. So in order to formalize the requirements, a piece of this is to eliminate the developer's choice. So right now it says low or moderate, and over the years it's been challenging to interpret what low or moderate means. Sometimes it was implemented as the developer's getting to choose, do you want low or moderate? Sometimes it's been implemented as needing to be 50% low, 50% moderate. So we're hoping to clarify that. I would like to introduce a requirement for very low income units, just based on the data that we presented already, and to codify exactly which percentage is required for which affordability level, for clarity for decision makers, for the public, for developers. Again, no recommended changes to our density bonus section. Density bonus is regulated by state law and is modified very frequently. The code as it's written now is aligned with state law, and it's the topic we just don't feel like we need to modify and put our Sonoma touch on it. The next one is increasing the term of affordability from 55 years to in perpetuity. As we were all discussing in the beginning, time goes by really quickly, and we're seeing right now the effects of some of those shorter, 30-year term units are coming up very quickly, and we'll be losing a good number of units in the next few years. We have a new recommendation. This is not reflected in the draft ordinance that's in the packet. Our recommendation tonight is to have 25% inclusionary housing for both for sale and rental units. So, compared to where before we were recommending 15% for rental and 25% for sale. So we're eliminating some of that ambiguity and confusion and just saying 25% for both. We are trying to recognize what Director Storer was mentioning, which is that individuals with a very low income are likely to have challenges purchasing a home. And so for rental units, we're recommending 5% in the very low income category, 10% low income, 5% moderate, and 5% for that middle above moderate 121 to 140 range. For the sale category, we're recommending 10% low income, 10% moderate, and 5% for the middle.
If I could just make a correction here, Christy, that's 121 to 160.
Oh, thank you.
I think it was.
As far as the development standards go, some of the language in our code is kind of wishy-washy and should be distributed and should be similar. And in light of SB 330, we wanted to be as objective as possible and put specific terms and limitations in there to be extremely clear about what is required. The units are going to be required to be constructed at the same time. Clarifying the requirement for the units to be integrated into the development and not clustered, requiring that the units be at least 75% of the market rate. This is coming from some projects a few years ago where the inclusionary units were just a tiny fraction of the size, but would be going for a very similar rental rate. And also clarifying requirements for ownership versus rental unit projects.
Christina,
Yes.
you can go back to that for a second. I would say that on bullet point number 2, integrated into development, I think a better and a clearer phrase, and I don't know how we're going to work it out in the actual language of the ordinance, rather than use the word integrated, is that the affordable units should be distributed throughout the development.
That's the language in the code that's recommended.
Distributed?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
And then just going over our approach, I know there's been some concerns about the speed with which we're moving through these zoning code changes. This is what we're calling our first pass, phase 1. We're attempting to address immediate improvements that are going to improve clarity, improve our existing ordinance, better align with our RENA goals, and make some meaningful improvements in the short term before we tackle our beast of implementing our housing element. During our housing element process, we are going to get so much information and so much data, and part of the housing element process is to make recommendations on our inclusionary housing ordinance, but that's several years away. So we don't want to wait 3 or 4, years before we make these changes. We want to do something now and revisit when we have the data. So as part of the housing element process, and this is going to be implemented pretty shortly, we already had the contract went to City Council, and we should be kicking off that process soon. But our RENA cycle goes until 2023, so we have time to do it, and we're in a good position to have enough time to have a really thoughtful process with a lot of meaningful public input. So as part of this housing element process, we will be the city and consultants will be collecting data, evaluating needs, assessing the effectiveness of the existing housing element, looking at, what were our goals back in 2015 and where did we end up. As part of the housing needs assessment, which is required by the state, we'll be looking at population, household, employment characteristics and trends, income characteristics, special needs groups, housing stock characteristics and conditions, comparing affordability of housing to city income levels, quantifying housing needs, including the city's regional housing needs allocation and existing and projected needs for special groups. So once we go through all of that, it's very, very likely that our inclusionary housing ordinance is going to change in a few years, but that shouldn't stop us from making some important improvements now. And then phase 3 is just this reiterative cycle of reviewing annually through our annual progress report, and where we keep track of how many affordable units and market rate units we're building and what income categories they're in. Probably a 4-year mid-cycle review is going to be warranted. And then as we go through our next RENA process in 8 years, we'll be going through all this all over again. So it is by no means intended to be, we're going to do this once and then leave it for 10 years. So as far as the goal of implementing in lieu fees, our current ordinance only has requirements for developments of 5 units or more. So our goal is to also be contributing to affordable housing in our city with smaller developments, and as well for fractional fees. Having a smaller projects on our small pieces of land. This is a really realistic scenario in our city. We have a lot of vacant or underdeveloped lands that are a 1/4 acre, 1/2 acre. We don't have a ton of, 50-acre sites. I believe our biggest vacant site might be 5 acres. So we're really anticipating more small projects than larger projects, and this will help us move in the right direction. And the table below is what the recommended fees are. And I need to move my Zoom window so I can see. So goodness, David, I might need you to read this. There we go. So the first row in the column are projects that are exempt from this, which are existing additions, remodels, and new residential that is less than 1,200 square feet. 1,200 to just under 2,000 square feet. The price per square foot is 10 units per acre. I'm hearing the fire trucks go by. $10 per square foot. And then for 3,000 to approximately 4,000, $15 per square foot. And then 4,000 plus, it's $20 per square foot.
Question about this?
Sure.
Yes.
So an individual building one single family home of 3,000 square feet will be required to make an in lieu fee payment?
That is correct. Yeah. In fact, an explanation, for this. This is derived from the public meetings that we had with the city council, I believe the month before COVID began, where the council adopted the impact fee, the AB 1600 fee for non-residential, and we deferred the residential fee component. And this will be your direction to the council to pick up where they left off at these particular rates. I will say that there was one variation on this theme that you're seeing here tonight, and that is we had provided to them a sliding scale all the way from $4, for example, in the homes from 2,000 square feet up to 3,000 square feet, there would be a sliding scale from $4 reaching to an apex of $10 per square foot at $29.99, and the same throughout the other category bands there. But what we've done here is benchmark them because of ease of administration rather than doing a sliding scale.
Okay, well, I'm just doing a little quick calculation here. So if we had 20 2,000 square foot homes built a year, that would be 40,000 square feet times $10 would be $400,000 a year that would go into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Is that where the money goes?
That's where it will go, yes.
Okay, well that could be significant, particularly given the size of houses that are getting built around here now. How were these particular fee numbers developed? Was this something that was developed by the Nexus study consultant and then recommended? Where did the 410?
Yeah. So what happened when I arrived at the city? There were 2 studies done, and we asked Karen Warner and Associates to dust them off and do an update. The issue at the time for the council was trying to come up with a fee for hotels, which we did. And these nexus studies, they also did one for residential, although as I've said previously, you don't need one for an in lieu fee because that's policy. But the study did provide us with a bandwidth of dollars per square foot that could be tolerated in the building of a production of a home or a subdivision. So the council landed at $4 a square foot for those smaller homes. And I believe there was general consensus of 1,200 square feet, anything below that not being subject to the in lieu fee. And then Christina, are you going to take the time to talk about fractional units?
Yeah, I think I tried to touch on it a little bit, but you can't provide a half a unit of affordable housing, and the way that our code is written, that we don't have any mechanism. If the requirement is for 1.25 units, we're just rounding down and not doing anything with those fractions. And so the way that the new ordinance is proposed, we would at least collect a fee for that 0.25 of a unit. Anything a half a unit and above would be rounded up. And so you would have to provide, instead of if it was 1.5 units that are required, that would be rounded up to 2. But for all of those little fractional units, that will be funds going into the Housing Trust Fund.
And then also one additional comment, Christina, and that is, we spoke about this, and that is if you've got a unit where a subdivision where there's only, let's say it's one unit is to be produced, that unit will require to be from the VLI bandwidth. And then as you get more units within a subdivision that are restricted, then you kind of go from left to right, from low to top, that if you have to require, if 2 units are required as a result of your 25% obligation, the first unit again will be VLI and the second one will be LI, and then you move up to moderate. Then after you get to moderate, then you can pick and choose. I think that's where we landed, Christina, is that correct?
Correct.
And that's in the current draft, I think.
And so just to clarify, the fee per square foot that's on here, this is basically where the council settled, or did they have yet to finalize their decision on this?
They have asked for it to come back, and this is the mechanism on which we determined would be the best, so that way they could see that the planning commission had a look at it. This is where they had left off, asked us to come back with some additional information, and we'll do that. But this is where they were on the dollar pricing at the time.
And this was in part the recommendation from the consultant who did the study?
Well, from them and also from us as staff, yes.
Can I ask a question about this?
Sure.
I like it, but I know that people are gamers. So if a developer or a builder comes in and says they're going to build a house of 1,999 square feet, and then they come back a short time later and they do an addition, how do we handle that? Do we go back and say, wait a minute, you really are over 2,000 square feet?
Well, given that the cost of construction is somewhere between 400 and 700 per square foot right now, I think that
really?
Huh?
Is it really?
Yes.
This is such a tiny portion of the overall cost. I don't see that being an issue. If somebody wants to build, it would be so much more expensive for someone to phase a project like that rather than put all at once.
I like the idea of that, because the Commissioner O'Neill mentioned, maybe what we do is we put in a provision that any additions or remodels to expand the square footage within a year beyond the limits of one of these categories would be required to pay at the rate or something. I'm not sure how to.
Yeah, I think our fire code is within 3 years if you exceed that value within any 3-year period.
I was going to suggest 2 years because there's a holding period for homes in which you can build it and live in it before you flip it, and you get some tax advantages if you live in a home for a certain number of years, as opposed to just building it to sell it. Yeah. And maybe worth.
We won't have the ability to craft that language tonight, but if that's the direction of the commission, we can work with legal counsel to come up with that language to capture that and present that to the council, city council.
This is all inclusive of ADUs or other living space?
That is correct.
Okay.
Well, ADUs are exempt from the inclusionary housing ordinance.
Well, I'm talking about if somebody were to build a new construction and they're building a 4,000 square foot house and an ADU, will include all of the square footage.
No, just a single family home. The ADUs are exempt.
Okay.
And that's new language. That's a new section of our ordinance.
I have a question.
Yes,
you hear
sir.
Regarding the in lieu fees for the 4 units, has it been considered that sometimes those are retirement projects? Often elderly people buy a 4-unit building, they occupy one because that's what they can afford, and they have some income coming in for retirement. It's also kind of an investment vehicle for older people for that very reason. They buy it in advance of retiring, and they use that for retirement funds. And I wonder whether that having that's about, I figured out 1,900 square feet. That's probably around $15,000. I just wonder whether that's a consideration of being kind of an onerous thing for that kind of a small unit. Any comments on that?
I definitely think we could have a conversation about perhaps adding an exemption if it's a 55 plus kind of a thing. But as far as just general 4 units, it's a very typical project size in the city of Sonoma. I don't have any information about what percentage of those are, from a retiree or not.
Well, we can address that later, for that matter. We got plenty of time to do that, as you pointed out. So.
We do. Are there any other questions on this slide?
I think that's the last slide, isn't it? Yeah, there we go.
That is, yeah. And then we just wanted to open it up for discussion and really hoping to focus on those 5 points that I brought up earlier. And maybe I'll just bring up that slide to kind of help guide the discussion. Too fast. Do you guys want this up, or do you want me to stop sharing
Well,
so you can see each other?
through the chair, I think we should open it up to the public. It's in the near term.
I think that makes sense, and let's go ahead and do that. So just to repeat, for those that may be waiting to speak, you'll have 3 to 4 minutes the first go around, and should that be insufficient and there is not a mob number that wishes to speak this evening, there'll be an opportunity, again, if desired, to speak a second time for a similar period of time. So again, we're talking 3 to 4 minutes. Then we'll pass the microphone over to someone next. And then again, if you wish to come back another time, that opportunity will exist. So with that, I'd like to open it up for the public. Christina, you're in control.
Absolutely. Oh, that's dangerous.
I know. I said that.
And just for your information, I know on your screen you might not be able to see. So we have 11 attendees in the meeting, and right now we just have 1 raising their hand. So
Okay.
I'm going to promote Fred Alabak. Fred,
Good
you
evening,
are
Fred.
on.
Thank you, Chair Wellender, for the extra minutes. They're like gold these days. And I was at Salt Point State Park this morning, and I could have cared less about a minute on a public comment as I was watching the waves roll in. But I think the Planning Commission has a really great opportunity here to provide a strong advice to the City Council on stronger inclusionary ordinance. And I'm glad that the staff has come up with some alternatives. The Sonoma Valley Housing Group suggested a range of alternatives. And I put a alternative in the chat box that would balance out the quote missing middle with extremely low at the bottom. So I don't see any reason why the city would not want to cover the minimum wage workers as well there. I think that would be fair to balance out a 25% rental with 2.5 for the very top and 2.5 for the very bottom. Let's see. I had all kind of comments here, but I really find myself pleased with the direction that the Planning Commission is going here. And I think that it's just important to note that the city would want to get this done pretty quickly and can come back later to get rid of that old one that was where people could just choose the moderate, because that was clearly no good. and anything on that would be an improvement. And I'm hoping that the Planning Commission will recommend some more at the lower end, because that's the group that I like to advocate for. And I think that in the materials that I presented in my own informal housing needs analysis, I think that the need is definitely demonstrated for the lower end there. And so it's worth including the extremely low there, and to balance out the very top that we clearly have lots of here. Let's see. So in terms of the in lieu fee, I remember being disappointed by the commercial in lieu fee, that the city council could have gone up to $90-some per square foot, but I think they stayed down at like 10 or 11, or maybe even less than that. So I think the market here shows that there's just a ridiculously resistant high cost ridge here. It's like the ridiculously resistant high pressure ridge that keeps the hot weather here. Is that the cost just never goes down here. So there's room, I think, in developers' profits here to make in lieu fees and inclusionary ordinance that stakes out some ground for the lower area median income working class here. So I would encourage an in lieu fee that I looked at a website called inclusionaryhousing.org, and they recommended to recoup 100% of the cost of a unit. So if you're going to get a fractional cost of a unit, that should be a fraction of what it would be to produce an actual unit. If it's going to be an in lieu fee, it should be in lieu of actually producing one, and not just producing a fraction of the cost of one. Let's see. I think the in perpetuity is a really great idea. That's really good. And I'd also suggest for a density bonus that people think about emulating the county's density bonus program, which is apparently an award-winning density bonus program, that if a developer takes it, then there gets to be a 40% inclusion for 40 to 60% AMI. And that's just fantastic for taking care of the essential working class here. And I don't see why the city wouldn't want to do that. That's already on the books at the county. The county's doing it. Why wouldn't we want to do a little bit more? So I would suggest looking at that. And let's see. And I said some other stuff, and I've really enjoyed engaging with this material in terms of economic feasibility analysis. And I know a developer here in town who says he could build a house for $500,000, but he would take no profit, but he would pay all his workers and his construction guys, but he would get no profit. So if he would get profit and a unit would be $750,000, it seems like there's quite a bit of profit involved in building a market rate house. And given that I can find more money on the floor at the laundromat than I can make on interest in my savings account or on a CD.
Fred, you're slipping into phase 2 of your opportunities. So why don't you mark your notes, and
Okay.
You'll be given an opportunity to come back for part 2.
Thank you very much, Ron.
Okay, Christina, anyone else?
And we have David Kendall.
All right. Welcome, David Kendall.
Yeah, hi, David Kendall, 521 Estimadera Drive in Sonoma. Can you clarify that phase 1, phase 2 statement, sir, that you just made to Fred? I didn't understand that.
I was saying that there was interest on the part of the public to be able to speak a little bit longer on these very special topics. And so normally you are given 3 minutes to speak and then sit down. We are now allowing it to be stretched to 4. And then in the event that still is not enough time, if there aren't a horde of people in line to speak, then there'll be an opportunity for you to come back and speak a second time, but you will be limited to up to 4 minutes the first go around. And that's what I meant.
Okay, understood. Thank you. I just wanted to say that I'm very encouraged to hear the Planning Commission taking up these points for affordable housing ordinance. And I've lived in Sonoma for a little under 5 years now, and been a renter. I have a small business here in town, and 4-person household. It's very difficult to get by in this town, and I mean, as a professional, I'm still struggling at times. So I just wanted to encourage you guys to, when you get into this 20%, 15% inclusionary, maybe up to 25%, to really balance it towards, or actually probably weight it towards the lower income side. I've got 2 kids in school here, and we're seeing that the numbers of young families drop dramatically. I think I would encourage you guys to do everything you can to tip the scale sort of towards the lower, middle, and very low, and extremely low. I'm sorry, I'm reading this now. Extremely low, very low, and low portion of the 25%, or at least a very even distribution. The things, I was kind of surprised by some of the numbers that were up there for the housing inventory, and because I don't see that, and I'm pretty keen on watching the rental market here, but it's not popping up on my radar that it's having any effect at all on the prices of rentals in town, or I'd love to buy a house in Sonoma for my family and live here, but it's just not in the cards right now at the way things are going. So anything that you guys can do will be appreciated. The more that you can subsidize housing for the very low and extremely low and ends of the scales, the better, in my opinion. And thank you for your time.
David, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, now we have Dennis Aftergut.
All right. Welcome, Dennis.
Welcome. Thank you. Christina, Chair Wellender, Commissioners, really appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Community Alliance for Planning Sonoma CAPS. I can see that a lot of thought has gone into the change directions by David and Christina, and that's very much appreciated. If I understood correctly, the overall percentage for rental projects and housing projects will be 25%. Did I understand that correctly?
Correct.
Well, on behalf of our 200 plus members, I want to express a lot of appreciation for that. I heard Fred say something about adding to the density bonus and why would anybody oppose it. And I certainly understand where he's coming from, but I want to say that there may be a couple of reasons. And one is about water smart planning and housing development. Yesterday, the governor, as we know, pronounced an emergency, a drought emergency in Sonoma County. And so, one of the very difficult binds the state has put city officials like you in is by telling you to continuing to increase the RENA goals, and telling you at the same time that you need to lower and reduce water consumption. And those two things seem very, very hard to reconcile. That's why, your job and our job is to find a balance. And I would say the same thing about fire safety, that those increasing goals particularly in a city like ours where the escape routes in a wildfire emergency are narrow, putting, lots and lots of new residents on those access routes are going to clog the arteries. And, we don't want to be another Paradise, California. So I express appreciation for your changes here. And I also express compassion for the bind that the state puts you in these difficult conditions that California faces. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Okay.
I see that David Kendall still has his hand up. I'm not sure if you're still wanting to speak or just haven't put it down. Nope, down. I think that is there anyone else?
Wendy Atkins.
Wendy? Wendy, would you like to speak?
Yes, I would. I just wanted to let you know that Ken Brown has sent a comment in after 6 o'clock, and I can read that for you if you'd like.
Thank you.
Please.
Well, I will do that. Ken Brown says, having a difficult time hooking up on Zoom. Here are my public comments for item 8.2. Many thanks. Ken Brown, 1396 Lubeck Street, Sonoma. The high demand in Sonoma for market rate homes shows there is room in the profit margin to make an inclusionary ordinance with more low-income units. The notion that developers who are clearly profiting may find it economically infeasible to address a clear housing need just doesn't add up. The city needs a developer economic feasibility study as soon as possible. If economic feasibility is to be an argument against a stronger low-income inclusionary ordinance, that this would unduly constrain profit. Developers need to open their books so the public can see their profit margins. Without objective, verifiable data, the public cannot trust anecdotal statements. Economic feasibility data should not be taken on faith. If profit margins remain as anecdotal evidence, housing needs data should be held to a lower or similar low standard of proof. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Wendy, for being Ken. So, is there anyone else?
Mr. Chair, while Christina's looking to see if there's something else, there are a couple of questions that came up and I'd like to try to answer them or provide some commentary. Question came up about the rate of the non-residential fee. I just looked it up. It's $4 a square foot for office and rental and $15 for hotels. And I believe the speaker, Fred, was correct. There was a bandwidth of anywhere from $7 to $9 on the low end for hotels, up to over 100 and something, if I remember correctly. Anyway, so that's the numbers: $4 a square foot for office and retail, $15 for hotel square footage. And the in lieu fee question is really an interesting one because there's a philosophy that says if you set the in lieu fee too low, you'll encourage people to pay the in lieu fee and not provide the gap, if you will, the cost of actually providing the true cost of dollar per dollar for that in lieu unit or portion thereof. And there's some, that's a good argument. But then the question is, what if you actually want that to happen so that you can build up your coffers in your housing trust fund to then perhaps go do something more meaningful, whether you commingle that housing trust fund money with other financing that's out there, I don't know. But that's certainly something that we would then have the discretion to do if we had a large housing trust fund coffer. So that concludes my comments.
Thank
Christine, anybody else?
No, that's it.
Well, I want to be a man of my word, so if Mr. Albach wishes to continue, he is welcome to come back.
Or does it make sense for us to have some conversation and then give him a chance?
No, I think we should complete public comment, and then we'll have an opportunity to duke it out amongst us.
All right, Fred has his hand up.
Hi, I don't have anything further to add, but I would suggest, like Larry said, that a lot of times discussion goes on and like to develop a public comment. So I would probably have something more to say based upon the way the discussion goes. But at this point, I think I've had my say, and I'm just glad things are moving along, and it looks like the cohort that I advocate for is going to get something here. So I'm glad about that. So thank you very much, Chair Relander.
You are welcome. So with that in mind, I will bring it back then to
Wendy, do you have
commission.
your, sorry, Chair Willander, Wendy, do you want your hand up still?
Yes. I just wanted to let you know that I noticed a few more emails regarding this subject that I have emailed each planning commissioner individually, and I also posted on the document center.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. So with that, I will close the public comment, and we'll bring it now back to the commission, and we'll welcome an energetic and passionate discussion on this topic.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir. Larry, go ahead.
Well, let me make a few general comments, also respond to some of the public comment. First of all, I think that a review of the in lieu fee schedule needs to be undertaken. Ultimately, this is a policy decision of the council. It's not a policy decision of the planning commission as to where to set fees. I welcome the chance to express an opinion on it, but this is not in our purview, and we're never going to be in the position of doing things like setting fees. And I'm a little off-put by what I consider to be pretty low fees, and I'd like to encourage the council to take a look at those again. Insofar as the extremely low income requirement or income category, and making that a requirement for some of these projects, I'm given that what we're doing here is trying to do some relatively rapid cleanup of an ordinance that has now shown us what it's going to produce. And I think that I'm reluctant to include the extremely low income category as a requirement at this point, though I think when we do the housing element study, it would be interesting to see whether we could come up with an extremely low income requirement based on the total number of units being produced. In other words, there might be a provision where a project of, and this is just off the top of my head, 15 units or more, or 20 units or more, would have to have an extremely low income component as well. But that would get triggered based on the volume or the number of total units produced. But I think that can wait for the housing element review to discuss. I don't think at this point I'd be comfortable including that requirement in this, what I think will be temporary modification. If I understand what Christina said about the density bonus, at this point we're pretty much tied to the state standard. And once again, this is something that can be looked up in much more detail when we do the housing element. And if there's an opportunity for the city to develop its own density bonus program and with its own provisions, that would make sense to me. But I don't think that's something that we would deal with at this point in the process. I think it's more than we've got the ability to decide right now, and we don't have enough study done to determine what that could be. So incorporating that into this part of the process wouldn't work. One of the speakers mentioned subsidized housing. It should be noted that the discussion tonight overall is not including any housing that's getting subsidized. That would be part of a non-inclusionary housing process. And while I am absolutely in favor of and a supporter of subsidizing affordable housing, that's something that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund will help to do in the future, as well as potentially other revenue sources that can go into this from variety of means to do larger projects. It's important to keep in mind that the inclusionary requirement, while valuable, is not going to produce a large number of affordable housing units under any conditions. It's very worthwhile doing what we're doing, but it's not going to make a dent in the enormous affordability issue we have here. As to the water issue, we're doing currently, David Storer has reported that the LAFCO is doing a study right now on our municipal resources and other factors having to do with what we can support. Water is going to be part of that. I think that's going to have to, guide decisions we're making going forward. I'm just going to throw in here, there's a lot of discussion now about legalizing large cannabis cultivation in Sonoma County, including, who knows, vast areas of the valley. And I'm quite concerned about that discussion going forward under the conditions of drought. And so the water issue is complicated, but I think water for people has to come before water for pot plants. And then finally, I would respond to the economic feasibility study. That word has come up and been thrown around. I've asked for more information about what those look like. And David Storer has indicated that he and Christina would do some research about what those look like. But once again, I think that would be something that in terms of the decision making on this process would come up during the housing element. So I'm supportive of the 25% requirement. A part of me would even like to go to 30% if we thought we could get away with it, and maybe we'll do 25%, and by the time the housing element's finished, we'll discover that it hasn't been a big impediment to anything, and we could go to 30% and produce even more. But for now, I'm very comfortable with what's been proposed. I actually would favor not including anything like maybe 5% moderate on the rental category. Do we have moderate in the rental category at all now? I think we do. I personally would love to see that reduced and have the low and very low income categories take up that slack. So it would be 10, 10, and 5 for moderate would be what I'd like to see, because I think that's where the need is. But I look forward to seeing what the opinion of the other commissioners is. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Now, who would like to continue the dialogue?
I can go next.
Yes, Sheila. Thank you.
Thank you. Overall, great work, staff. I think that there's so much in here, and it's so much more robust than what we have in place today. So I really do like it overall. I have a question about how we monitor the housing once it's out there in the market, whether it's a rental or owned. What is being done to ensure that it truly is staying as a low-income housing or whatever category it falls into?
We definitely have policies and procedures in place. Anytime a rental unit is vacated, the property manager or owner indicates to the city that has happened. We do all the pre-qualifications for all of the individuals who will be living in the units. It is definitely an area where we can do better, and are working on a program right now to try to do a better job keeping our inventory and tracking and doing annual reviews.
Well, and I think that's one of the things I'd like to see this coffer be used for, is some of the monitoring, because like I said, people are gamers, and there are people who will take advantage of this and they don't necessarily qualify anymore, or they've moved away, but it's such a good deal that they share it with their friend. So that's something I would definitely like to see monitored so that it doesn't get lost, kind of like, I see, all right, Director Storer has a comment.
Oh, do I have to unmute you? Is this what happened? That was not on purpose, I promise. You have to do it. That's not me. That's
He has to unmute himself.
He has to unmute himself. I will speak on his behalf, and as soon as he can figure out how to unmute.
Done it. Sorry.
Oh, there we go.
Sorry. To address your point, Commissioner O'Neill, each affordable property manager, if you will, has to report to us on an annual basis within the first 60 days of the month what those income levels are for each of their tenants that are in those units. And so we've been doing that for many years. And as Christina said, we are looking at perhaps adjunct staff, if you will. We have an iron in the fire on one particular company that can provide that service to us, because our hope is that over time we get more units and it becomes unmanageable for staff. It's getting to that point with a limited staff now because we have so many units that Christina has just shown you. So we take it very seriously, and we want to make sure we don't let anything slip through on the affordability levels.
And as far as the fee for doing that goes, that would likely not come from the Housing Trust Fund through our modified rental and ownership forms. We're collecting fees from the developers to manage that program on an annual basis. So this will be the first year. So I believe the beginning of the year we'll start collecting those fees and have some seed money to start doing that.
Okay, great. Yeah, because with 45 units and climbing, it's definitely going to be something that's going to take an auditor or somebody to monitor it and make sure that we're not just giving somebody a great deal.
Yeah, and there's people who do this all the time in larger jurisdictions. They have a whole affordable housing department with, several staff members, and we are a small but mighty planning department of 3. So having someone who is an expert at looking at the data and the numbers and going through the applications and qualifications would be a wonderful addition.
I know my daughter, who's a property manager in Atlanta, has found some of their rentals that are supposed to be affordable are actually being used as VRBO. So they catch them all the time, and people play games. So thank you. I appreciate that.
There's also a component that touches your industry that some other jurisdictions, they use specific brokerage companies and personnel who are really familiar with working on affordable units. And so those units would have to be transferred by professionals that are used to dotting their I's and crossing their T's.
Okay. A couple of other comments. I'm not opposed to offsite housing. I don't believe it definitely has to be on site. I actually really think that there is a value in having something more like a Japanese style housing, an apartment building that has smaller units and it's grouped together. So I'm not so concerned about that being offsite. I definitely feel like that there's a market for people living in an area where they're surrounded by other people in smaller affordable units. So I would definitely be open to that. I'm also not really keen on lengthening to 55 years. I think that that's a real disincentive, and also it gives us just such a long horizon. Unless that property is owned by a community group or a church or something, that's a very long time. So I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that, but I will certainly listen to the other commissioners.
Can I clarify what you mean? So currently it's 55 years?
No, isn't it currently shorter than 55 years, and you're extending it to 55 years, right?
It's currently 55, and the recommendation is to extend it in perpetuity so that we can't lose the units.
Thank you. All right. The other comment I had was the size of a affordable unit had to be 75% of the market rate units.
That is one of the proposals in the ordinance, yes.
Okay, and again, I'm not really keen on that, because why not have the ability to have smaller units? Again, like the Japanese style places that I was referring to before. I used to live in Japan, so I love that design. And, people can live very minimalist and comfortably in a small space. I'm not keen on the 75% of market rate. I think that if we're going to make it affordable and make it work for developers, that we don't have to be that restrictive. I don't see the value in that. I love the in lieu fee for even less than 4 units. I think that that's really fabulous. And I would like to talk about how the coffer is going to be utilized in the future, and something getting into what one of our speakers, our community speakers talked about, was something that we can do to set up either a down payment assistance program or an equity sharing program for people that want to become homeowners in Sonoma and are having trouble getting that burden. Like you said, it's so hard to get to that level where you can come up with a down payment or something. So I would like to see some discussion about what's going to happen with the coffer, and either coming up with a down payment assistance program or some kind of an equity share for ownership.
Commissioner O'Neill, while we go through other comments, I will look up the Housing Trust Fund, because when we established it in 2019, I was sure to provide the council with a list of things, but not limited to those things. I want to say about 10 things of which you just mentioned too, and I'll try to screen share a little bit later, okay?
I love that you're ahead of me. Thank you.
All right.
And just to touch on your comment about the 75%, this is an issue that we heatedly debated at the ad hoc, and there were definitely members on both sides. The rationale for that number was based on some issues that we've had with prior projects, and then that the guidelines as to what rents can be charged aren't based on square footage, they're based on the number of bedrooms. So the maximum rent for 1,000 square foot, 3-bedroom apartment is the same as a 2,000 square foot 3-bedroom apartment. And so the rationale is not wanting to have big market rate developments with 3,000 square foot houses and then 500 square foot affordable units that are going to be more expensive perhaps than a market rate one.
Christina, can I screen share at this point? Do I have the ability to do that? I think I do, right? All right, hang on.
Well, David's futzing, let me say, since I was part of the 75% discussion, I've just realized, Christina, that one of the things we might need to define is, because a project could have a variety of sized market rate units. So it's 75% of what? The average size of the market rate units?
Yeah, I can pull up the language in the ordinance, but I believe that it addresses that issue.
Okay, thank you. Pardon me for having not memorized it yet.
There'll be a test tomorrow. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Right, cool. Is the type good enough, or maybe there we go. So we have a very short document here. We have some definitions, statement of purpose. Here's the explanation of what was created. We've got some management going on there. Then here are the items that we may invest in with our housing trust fund money. So let me see if I can blow that up. Sheila, can you read that?
Yeah, there it is. First-time home buyer loans or other forms of assistance. Number 7.
Cool.
7.
I'll just leave it up there.
I'll
just leave it up there so you can read it for a minute. Is that okay? Just tell me when to take it off, and then we can go back. Would it be helpful if I send this out to everybody?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Okay, we'll do it.
Thank you.
All right, hang on a sec. Just writing it down. I'm writing it down on a piece of paper. I don't have an iPad.
My kids all went back to, or my oldest went back to paper. No more iPads this week. It's so great.
This is actually called a remarkable tablet, in case you really want to see. It's electronic.
Not real paper like mine.
Disgusting.
Okay. Disgusting. All right, I'm done. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for
Commissioner
that.
Sheila, continue, please.
No, I'm good. Those are
You're
my
done?
key notes, and I look forward to hearing the other commissioners.
Thank you very much. And to follow, Bob?
Hey, I just want to say thank you to staff for providing all of the information that we've asked for. And I think that what you're proposing to us is a very good recommendation. And I do support the recommendations that you're putting out there. I would like to see us move forward with what we have.
Okay. Jim?
I appreciate all the work that's been done by the staff and particularly with the staff and the ad hoc committee getting together. I think they've done a really good job of presenting this. I'm just going to touch on a couple of things that might concern me, and I think more or less in the future. I don't see the idea of merging rental and for sale housing in one project. And along that same line, I wonder whether it's not going to cause financing problems, which I can't quite foresee, but it's very different than what the like Saha and the affordable housing people do. They have special financing for those limited time rentals. They manage them, and then they have the build in the financing and convert them to purchase. Has there been any study on that, on mixing the housing, the rental and the purchase, and also going beyond that 55 years as far as the impact on financing, which would attract people or not?
My understanding is most of the financing issues are that it has to, for the grants like the Cal Homes and things like that, they have to be in perpetuity, but I'll let the director comment on that.
Yeah, the Saha project, am I on? Yep, I'm on. The Saha project's forever going to be rental. They're not going to condo those things. And so to the extent you mix rentals with for sales and things like that, we have two affordability housing agreements. One for rentals. You've got to tell us what you're going to do with your project for private development. You get to pick one, folks. You don't get to kind of go like this every week. But a rental can be converted to ownership over time during perpetuity. So I don't know if Dave Five had any comments on that. He may have seen that. Something different.
Well, additionally, I think there are certainly the things that bear deeper study, but I don't think at this time, I think it's more important that we get this ordinance into action and get some production from it. And therefore, I think we've got lots of time to make changes. Again, and the housing element comes up, and really there could be any other time after that, I think. So I would support the ordinance as it's presented, I think. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Jim. Well, we're out of commissioners except for myself. And I do have a few comments that I would like to share. And for some, I may sound like a broken record, but oh well. As I glanced over the entire 8 pages of the ordinance, for the most part, I fully support it. I think that we are headed in a good direction, and indeed that includes supporting the 25% split. What I don't support, and I've said it before, is I do not support the size. And I disagree with our associate planner that just because something happens in the past, because I believe you're talking about the Broadway project at MacArthur, that was unusual. And you know what happened to that one? It blew up and didn't become a reality. So it isn't an issue of size. They were extremely small. But I think that we are really blowing it when we are imposing upon a developer to build affordable units of considerable size. And I'm a strong advocate, will continue to be until I'm put 6 feet under, with the idea of going smaller. We don't need to live in huge houses. And I would rather see something where we give the developer a range of sizes of, say, not less than 1,200 square feet and not more than 1,650 square feet. If you can't carve out 3 bedrooms out of even 1,200 square feet, they don't have to be big. If you can't carve up 3 bedrooms out of 1,650 square feet and have a livable space, I want to, we're already increasing the percentages. And I think that in and of itself is going to hopefully produce more units, which is one of our goals. But then at the same time, if we come in with what I think are unjustified percentages of size, again, why are we supporting the what I call the fallacious rule that bigger is better? So that's one. The other thing that I don't like in terms of incentives, and we haven't really talked about that, is alternate parking ratios. I think it's a big mistake if we give the consideration to lessening the number of parking spaces. I have no problem shrinking the size of parking spaces, hoping that they will either be smaller cars or better drivers. And also that also goes to the fact that, you know, if we allow for smaller units, that allows possibly for a greater number of affordable units. That would also possibly allow for more flexibility in the site plan design that allows for circulation, including parking spaces. So I can't be more clear as far as that. I think that when you look at some of our affordable housing projects that have been built, I think one of the red flags, the visual red flags that at least drives this guy nuts, is when you drive by an affordable housing project and the architecture kind of blends in with everybody else and it doesn't necessarily scream out as being affordable, with one exception, and that is there's an excess number of parked cars either on site or on the public streets. And again, that is an image that I don't particularly support and would sure like to see us not compromise that. I also think that the idea of scattering the units, okay, if we're trying to be equitable, again, in the spirit of today's language, okay, but if there is some economy in site planning where you can cluster affordable units, provided that you don't sacrifice access to open space, I would be open to the idea that a developer could actually cluster the units, provided that he provide an additional unit, something like that. So again, I want to reinforce what my fellow commissioners have said. Staff, you've done a very good job. Thank you very much. I also want to reiterate to what Jim said, is this is not the last time for us to take a stab at this. So I like that. And so now that I have probably exceeded my 4 minutes, I will be quiet and now throw out for any more comments.
I've got my hand up, but I guess I want to take the other side of the size argument.
Okay.
I don't look at the restriction of having it at least 75% for the affordable units as being necessarily bad, because it also says that you can have the other market units could be smaller to drive that equation. You don't have to necessarily just drive the affordable units to be bigger. You can consider that to be just the opposite. And I do not want to see us get into a situation where affordable units are so small that they effectively are renting at market rate. That's ridiculous. And that's what happened at Broadway, but I don't see that we should give the developer a chance to do that again. And I still support what staff is recommending.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to comment?
Mr. Chair, if it helps proceedings here, we could probably have Christina go through those levers or policy points and maybe formulate a straw poll and then maybe take a vote on each. Then we'll just have to figure out how to, craft a resolution.
What's
Okay.
a lever?
Lever, a thing that you pull.
That's foreign language from the British. Yeah, I think that's good, provided that I believe most of us have expressed support of the ordinance as it has been written. I hear what my fellow commissioner, Mr. Felder, has said about the size. I think of, you think of Broadway project, I think of Mockingbird, where there weren't particularly small units there. And we also saw what ended up happening in terms of the market rate sizes, where we thought we were going to hit the missing middle. And the missing middle is at 1.2 million, I believe, or 1.3, which is the smallest one. So again, that's another topic, but that certainly is another missing housing element that we have. We don't have the luxury of having sacramental support. So that's where again, back to my support of smaller units. So having said that, if I'm seeing nobody else that wants to.
Can I make one more comment?
Oh, please.
I wasn't on the ad hoc, and I'd really love to get some more feedback on this issue from Commissioner Felder. I do hear what you're saying about the Broadway project, and I agree that those affordable units were way too small. Could we do some kind of a hybrid, like it can't be less than 600 square feet?
Yeah, in fact, that was my thought. I think one of you mentioned that, put a range in there, but if we just put a minimum in there, I'm probably going to be wrong, but weren't those coming in at like somewhere between 600 and 900 square feet?
No, they were
No, they were
400,
smaller, like 400 and stuff.
Yeah, I know.
453.
So
Yeah.
my point is, yeah, so why don't we just go with, say, 850 or 1,000 or whatever, you can pick a number where you can live with, that they should be no less, and we'll embed that into the ordinance.
Well, I've been doing a lot of loans lately on houses that are only 750 square feet in the city of Sonoma, on Fano Lane, on First Street West. And there are couples who are happily living in 750 square feet, and they're buying these at market rate. But so I'm.
Are those 2-bedroom or 3?
I don't remember, but what does the bedroom size doesn't necessarily, I mean, it factors into the rental issue, and that's where you guys are going to have to balance me. But the size issue, and I'll go back to Japan, the average apartment is 750 square feet for a 3-bedroom. So it's doable. And I'm with Chair Wellender that I don't really want to push size. And I think that we can give people the opportunity to get something lovely, but maybe we have to put a floor on it. Like it can't be less than a certain number of square feet.
So if I can jump in, so the 75%, that was one of the issues that was, as I mentioned, discussed heavily in the ad hoc, and the solution was to change, and it's only applicable to rental units. So the rentals are really where it's the issue, where the rate is set by our county data, and it's based on number of bedrooms by square footage. So that does not apply to the ownership units, but I would support staff looking into that a little bit further, potentially coming up with some size ranges or minimums.
In the interest of moving something along tonight, it's not going to harm the commission to put in 750 feet with an asterisk, and we'll try to remember Commissioner Barnett to forward that to the council. And again, I owe an apology for that, but we can make a note. I got my pen, Larry.
I don't have a problem with putting in a minimum size if you don't want to put in the percentage, but I just don't want to see us getting 400 square foot units that become market rate rentals.
Well, I'm apparently didn't communicate very effectively, because what I was proposing was a range of minimum of 1,200 to 16. So I again am not trying to give a developer a window opportunity to do something that was proposed on Broadway. I think that is inappropriate. But again, I think the idea of supporting more than less in terms of the numbers, and I think we can create a range that would be acceptable and that would not necessarily preclude a developer for wanting to do something.
What if we say that it's got to be 75% of the average size, but with no less than that doesn't work.
No.
Never mind.
75% of a 3,000 square foot house, what was the largest one at Mockingbird?
I think 25, but plus an ADU, plus a 2-story ADU.
So if you take 25 and say it's 75% of that, that's 1,875 square feet. I mean, that's a pretty big size house.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that am I missing something, or aren't people grateful for having a roof over their heads?
We're talking rentals here. So, Christina, what's the average or what's the range of sizes for that De Nova apartment complex on Spain Street, West Spain?
So I can pull, I have that. So the affordable units are starting at, let me pull it up so I'm not just saying numbers.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting to calculate what the ratio is in terms of the size of the affordable ones
And
to the non.
Commissioner O'Neill, just to give you a little bit of information. So we did a big survey of the units in Sonoma of developments where we have market rate units and affordable units. And what we found is that for the brand new, beautiful, modern units, there's a big difference between a market rate unit and our deed restricted units. But as the units are aging, the market rate units can actually be charged less rent than what is required by the county based on the number of bedrooms and income restrictions.
Seems to
I'm
me
sorry, I want you to go back and explain that further, because that sounded, I'm not sure where you were headed with that one.
So this was getting to the size, the 75% size. So I'm not going to say names, but we queried a development in Sonoma that has a number of both market rate and affordable units, probably 15, 20 years old. I spoke with the property management company, and the rent of the market rate units was $2,100 a month. Based on the affordable housing levels, it was a 3-bedroom unit. Based on affordable housing, they could actually charge $2,400 a month.
So to me, that there's a problem with the county's formula. There's not a problem with the number of bedrooms or size. The county needs to revisit that. If that's truly what you said is reality, then it's the county that needs to revisit how they calculate the prices.
Well, we can either tell the county they need to do something different, or we can do what we can control and react at this moment and try to be able to compare apples to apples, and not a gigantic, organic, beautiful apple with a teeny, teeny, teeny little kid snack apple.
Well, I'm just saying, though, that you gave that illustration and you were trying to sway it one way, and I think that's fallacious as far as of saying that eventually a market rate could be rented less than the affordable. Something's wrong with you.
So could be, as in that's what the county's limitations are. I don't know what I don't have the survey data, but there does appear to be the way that the comparison for the deed restricted and the not deed restricted over time, it seems like there's a diminishing returns as far as county's income levels go. And so having
I'm causing a distraction, so let's get back on point so we can get done and get this thing to City Council.
I think we heard a clear direction between now and City Council to consider some alternative methods of limiting size.
Okay. So let's heed our director's recommendation, Christina, and why don't you go back up to the 5 British levers, and let's go through and review one by one and see if we can't get some support from all of our commissioners on that.
All right. Well, I'm just, if everyone is amenable, I would prefer to just go through the sections of the ordinance. Did anybody have any issues with the exemptions to the inclusionary housing ordinance?
Christina, I would say that if we haven't discussed it, let's make the assumption that the commission is fine with it. So,
okay. So then the next question would be the percentages. So the current percentage is 20% for both rental and ownership, and proposing to increase to 25%.
Now that's for both, because you've written it up for just 15, correct?
It's written up for 15. Our recommendation tonight is to increase it to 25% for both rental and ownerships and have different percentages.
Okay.
So is there a consensus to raise our percentage of required inclusionary housing from 20 to 25%?
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
and this is on both rental and ownership projects?
Correct.
Yes.
And are we going to modify, and how are we going to break out the percentages of affordable categories in the rental projects?
That will be my next question. So did I hear that we had consensus on that issue?
We had a recommendation from Larry about a 10-10-5 instead of a 5-10-5-5.
Yeah, so
think-
right now I'm just trying to nail down that 25%. It sounded like we had consensus.
Yes.
Yep.
So then moving on, I am sharing my screen again. So for rental, the current proposal is for 5% very low, 10% low, 5% moderate, and 5% middle.
Yes, and I'm proposing that we just go to 5% moderate and 5% and 10% very low and 10% low. And not put
That violates the 15% that we have to try to hold to.
I think we'd be right at it, right? Oh, no, you're right, it does.
Oh,
Yeah, that would require the economic feasibility study likely,
Don't want to go there.
Okay.
which I think you suggested is something maybe you
Yeah,
could look
housing
at when the housing element comes along.
Yep.
Okay.
I think we better leave it alone.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure why we're dealing with the missing middle in the rental category when we know that this is basically, I mean, people who are renting are people who well, maybe I just don't have all the information.
Well, then go 10% moderate.
Yep.
Do I hear, can I take a poll who would like to keep it as is versus changing it to 5 very low, 10 low, and 10 moderate?
I'd like to keep it as is just because we seem to be struggling to create opportunities for the missing middle. And even though it's may not be the biggest need, I think we have an obligation to try to address and maintain as much housing diversity as we can, including rentals.
I'd leave it as is.
I'm okay with leaving it as it is.
Hey,
Any
next.
other comments? So for sale, the proposal is for 10% low, 10% moderate, and 5% middle.
I don't think there was an issue there, Christina.
I like it.
All right. Then did we have any comments on the proposed in lieu fees?
Only that those numbers be looked at again with an eye to potentially raising them.
So that would be then to forward to the council what we have, recognizing their prior discussion with an eye toward changing them at some point in the future after we test driven them.
Yeah.
That works.
Yep.
All right. Then we're getting to the inclusionary unit development standards, the timing of construction. I didn't hear any concerns about that. The location, the terminology is that affordable units shall be integrated. Oh, what did you said? Shall be integrated into the overall project design and distributed throughout the development.
We also need to put an asterisk there, Christine, I think, to readdress some minimum standard as well.
Yeah, that's the next unit size. So the language, and let me just share my screen so you guys can see. No, I'm a lovely reader, but the average floor area of each individual affordable unit shall be at least 75% of the average floor area of rental units in the development and the same number of bedrooms as the market rate units.
Yeah, you need to add an S to bedrooms.
Thank you.
We'll take it off of units at the end of the sentence, Larry.
Well, that's if you want to play a zero-sum game, yeah.
That's
then
what it's all about, man.
B states the mix of unit sizes and numbers of bedrooms in the affordable units shall be similar to the mix of unit sizes and bedroom counts provided in the development as a whole, except that the affordable units may have less floor area than the market rate units to assist in achieving affordability, provided the units comply with the average floor area requirements in subparagraph F3A above.
So that's just for rentals, or is that for ownership too?
This is for ownership. So this is just, oh, that's a good comment. Yeah, well, because so no, that's fine. So F3A is only for rental units. So what this is requiring is that an ownership unit would have to have the same size, same bedrooms, and have that the mix of sizes and bedrooms be reflective of the whole development. So if everything is a 3-bedroom, then the affordable couldn't be a 2-bedroom.
So you're not putting any restrictions on square footage. You basically are telling it it has to be driven matched bedrooms.
Yeah, I think what I would propose is have a new bullet for the rental and then for the ownership, and maybe we have the minimum size for the ownership units.
Yep. Yeah, this is confusing.
Then we have exterior appearance. I think this is pretty straightforward. Exterior appearance and quality of the affordable units shall be the same or similar to the market rate units, with exterior materials and appointments similar to and architecturally compatible with the market rate units in the development. And then upgrades, the developer shall not offer upgrades of materials to renters or buyers of affordable dwelling units, where the upgrades would increase the total price paid by the buyer to the developer or the total rent paid by the tenant for the affordable unit to above the specified affordable rent or sales price.
Okay, I'm sorry, I got to go back to exterior appearance.
Sure.
I'm a little worried that we're sliding into subjective language.
Yeah, I have that same concern. I think we'll have to run over that with a D5.
Yes, because exterior appearance shall be same or similar. We're getting into some qualitative judgment here. So I think the quality, which, you know, is less subjective, is an okay word. But I'm not sure if we can tie into exterior appearance in similar. You know, I'm not sure.
Yeah, D5, if we delete the word or be similar, if we say shall be the same, what does that do for us? Does it help us be more 330 compliant?
That's going to be much more objective, because I think you can make that determination without the subjectivity of what similar means.
Good.
Thank you.
You get that, Christina?
I did.
Cool.
All right, residents of inclusionary units shall have access to the project's common open spaces or recreational amenities. Accessory dwelling units shall not be counted towards meeting a project's inclusionary housing requirements. Inclusionary units may be for sale or for rental units. This determination shall be stated in the project narrative and noted on the site plan reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission. A rental project shall provide rental affordable housing units, and an ownership project shall provide ownership affordable housing units. Conditions of approval regarding the affordable housing units shall clearly identify if the units are for sale or for rental. All right, then we jump down to, I believe, the time frame, and changing from 55 years to in perpetuity. Are there any comments on that?
Isn't perpetuity subjective because there's no end? 55 is very objective.
Well, you could say in perpetuity or till the end of time.
There we go.
Infinity plus 1.
Oh, infinity minus 1.
Well, I think that is it.
So with that in mind, would anyone care to make a motion
just want to say thank you to everybody. I will call Commissioner McDonald tomorrow, let him know where we landed on these things, and we'll tee this up for the city council. Thank you very much, everybody.
So we don't have to make a motion.
No, I think we're good.
We don't
I was
need a
already thinking-
recommendation.
Okay. So if we've
You don't
done
need a
our,
motion, D2, for a, you just gonna use the minutes?
Well, actually, we don't create verbatim minutes or even condensed minutes. We just have a vote. So let's go ahead and just take a vote. I think that's probably cleanest.
And that would include the CEQA exemption.
That is correct. Yeah, just make a motion to accept the sequence determination and also the recommendations that you discussed as a group.
do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I second.
We have no more levers to push?
Knock it off.
The levers are in the garage.
Garage.
Roll call, please.
Now, my lever's in my boot.
Oh, yeah.
All right, I'm going to end
At
this
least
before it
it's not in
gets.
your bonnet.
Roll call.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Commissioner Felder,
Yes.
Commissioner Bohar,
Yes.
Vice Chair Barnett,
Aye.
Chair Willander.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
So we're going to move on to items for discussion, which I do believe our director has some items to share with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. There's only 5, but I'm sure they're all very important. First one is that there was going to be a Citizens Advisory Committee meeting later this month in a few days. It got canceled. And the reason I bring it up is because they were going to be discussing the Amazon project. It's been continued to May 26th. And I've been working with Councilmember Barnett to prepare for that meeting. And I think I'll also be working with some other folks with respect to meeting with the Amazon folks and or some people within the valley, the direction of Councilmember Barnett. Second out of the 5 is at the council meeting, they approved a second cannabis project, and that would allow for a second retail storefront business. That ordinance has been changed. It'll be effective May 13th. I believe it is 30 days after the second reading. So that's not the 13th, is it? Anyway, the point being is we have, Spark coming on May 13th to your planning commission. That's what my note says. I'm sorry, I got confused reading my own writing. So we're working
Welcome
with
to my world.
yeah, and I'm not even doing the PowerPoint or anything tonight or the agenda. Third out of 5 is the city council adopted a polystyrene ordinance ban on certain types of polystyrene ware, and that will be effective May 19th. 4 out of 5 is this past week, the Public Works Department convened the Traffic Safety Committee to go over issues regarding the lodge. That was on the 15th, and that meeting was continued to June the 17th, but not without recommendations going to the Public Works Department with respect to doing some striping and signage on Clay Street, and also doing some striping for a crosswalk across Broadway, and moving a bus stop location. We can certainly, if you have interest in learning more about that, please give me a call and I can kind of clue you in. Christina, you were there for that meeting too, weren't you?
I was.
Yeah, so either call Christina or myself, and we can fill you in.
Wendy was there too.
Yeah, last but not least are the rezones that were talked about in items not on the agenda. The notice of availability of the draft DIR was released on the 19th. So we're 3 days in to a 60-day public review period of that draft DIR, of which there will be a hearing of the county planning commission. And as the speaker mentioned, there are various alternatives to the project. The reason I'm bringing it up right now is I will be providing assistance to, again, the Citizens Advisory Committee member, Councilmember Barnett, in that regard. The properties that are part of the rezone that you were asked to think about are the of what you know is to be the Merlot properties, the 4 1-acre sites on the west side of Broadway. And the interesting thing there about the county, without getting too far into going into this particular update, the county has proposed, as the speaker said, talking about their density being increased to by right development. Right now, the county has 1 unit per acre, or for those sites, and it's being proposed to go to medium density, which will allow for 10 units on each of those 4 properties. But the kicker here is that the county has a 100% density bonus, which will take it up to 20 units to each acre. Oh, by the way, our GMO for those 4 1-acre sites is 20 units to the acre. So there's no surprise there as far as the density. But as the speaker said, there's some analysis that we need to be looking at, and we will do that as a staff. And I'll provide that feedback along with staff to Councilmember Barnett. Again, in the meantime, if it's of interest to you, we can, when I distribute the other materials, I can send you the link to the county website so you can see the draft EIR for yourself. Would that be of interest to any of you as commissioners?
Yes.
Yes.
I have a question, please. 2 questions.
Sure.
So is the EIR so dadgum thick that we can't get hard copy?
Yes.
I don't think they make hard copies anymore.
I think that is the case, Chair Willander. They've offered to have us go to the library and other locations. Maybe what I'll do is I'll call the county and see if they can send me a hard copy. But they offer it in flash drives, hard copies at libraries and the like, and then they're a link. But it is a very large volume. Again, I'm sorry, I know I'm going long-winded on this, but there are 59 sites, and this is a programmatic EIR, which means they're going to tear off at a later time to do certain environmental evaluation. But we have just the 4 sites that are anywhere near our city limits. There's something up in the Verano area, but not in our UGB. These 4 are in our UGB.
There's a few sites in the Agua Caliente area that are, I believe they're part of the spring specific plan, but I'm not sure. Just based on my glance, it looks like they're part of that.
I'll send a link out.
I have a question though, follow up on that. In order to sleep tonight, if they go to a higher density, is the city obligated to provide services?
No, sir. You're not obligated. You're not obligated to annex, but it gets a little bit more interesting what the county can do, what it can't do. But we need to be careful not to get too far into the weeds on this one.
But I'd like to be able to.
You need to be able to sleep though.
Yes, I would like that to be a point of discussion at some point because that's pretty significant.
Well, certainly, Mr. Chair, we can come to your commission and give you some feedback on our review of the draft EIR. And if that's a prerogative of the commission, we're happy to do it.
And when you do that, David, if you could also speak to what the city opportunities are, given that these properties are currently within the UGB, but are controlled by the county. I understand that when they rezone it and upzone it, they'll get the credit for the RENA numbers, but when they revert to the city, should we annex them, we can then look at the zoning all over again. Am I right?
Correct. We'll report on that too as well.
Okay, thank you.
And the city will still get credit if the units are built when it is part of the city of Sonoma and the building permits are issued at the time it's in the city, then they would also count for us.
Oh, well, I like that.
Well, what they do is they end up transferring those RENA numbers over to us from their numbers. But we'll talk more about that later.
Okay. Any update on other issues? Those were just items of discussion or updates. Okay. Comments from the commission?
I had just one in case people were not aware. The city council was going to make an appointment of a new planning commissioner last Monday, but they continued it to their May meeting. The one to replace Kelso.
No, Bob, you got it mistaken. They wanted to replace you, but it said the words KELSO, but in between the lines, it was you.
Well,
okay.
I can be bought.
Anybody else have a comment? I I do want to have one comment, and that's regarding the lodge. Was on the update and all the improvements at the lodge, was that gone through design review?
No, so the changes are in the public right of way. It's painting the curb on the south side of Clay Street. I believe it's already painted a little bit. They would repaint and stripe that. And then the other improvement or recommendation is moving the bus stop. And I believe that would be in county.
Caltrans.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
Caltrans right
Yeah.
away.
No, what I'm commenting on is what has been transpiring for the last 4 or 5 weeks, and that is a fairly significant redo of the landscape, including the island in the auto court in the front. And I received a complaint from a citizen who recognized the work as being rather modest. You might say mundane, might say not very attractive. And we love to use the expression, well, that's the gateway. You know, this is the gateway, that's the gateway. So I would love to know why there wasn't any city oversight.
There was.
Well,
That was-
then who signed off on it?
Me. It went through design review. It went through design review over a year ago.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, what we can do is we can have Christina follow up with a memo to you showing
I
you
would
the
love that.
timeline and the plans that were
And
approved.
I can send you the staff report.
I would
I
love
would-
to see it.
I was sorely disappointed to see them remove at least 2 mature specimens of Dazzlerian longissima, which, you know, are slow growing but magnificent specimens. And these were beauties. And they just tore them out and threw them in a truck, and that was the end of it. It breaks my heart when I see that happen.
So with that sad story, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Reasonably successful.
Good job, Christina.
Well done, Christina. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.